Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar being held in partnership between the Emirates Policy Center and Public Diplomacy Administration at the Turkish Presidency. The event aims to highlight the reality and prospects of the UAE-Turkey relations, mutual interest, and cooperation opportunities between the two countries. This webinar is being organized before the expected visit of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to the UAE in the middle of this month. His scheduled visit follows a visit by Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and Deputy Supreme Commander of the UAE Armed Forces, to Ankara in November 2021. During this visit, the two sides signed 12 agreements and MOUs in the field of finance, banking, ports, customs, energy, environment, health, sovereign investment, and others. The UAE-Turkish relationship has witnessed tangible detente since Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the UAE's national security advisor, visited Ankara and met with President Erdogan on August 18, 2021. The detente is the outcome of a realization by the two sides that the continuation of tensions no longer serves their interests. It was realized that they could expand their common denominators and manage differences on continuous issues through constructive dialogue. I don't want to go into the details and the background of relation between the two countries. I also do not want to reiterate the regional and international context that push for this rapprochement, mutual interest, and the enormous cooperation opportunities in various fields. I want the participants of this webinar to discuss the multiple dimensions. I only take this opportunity to point out that this webinar will discuss three main themes: implications of geostrategic shifts on regional security, ways to build a constructive dialogue on foreign policy issues, defense and security cooperation, and economic cooperation opportunities. The speakers from both the Emirati and Turkish side will address these themes. Representing the UAE side are Dr. Abdul Khaliq Abdullah, a professor of political science and expert in Gulf affairs. And second, we have Dr. Al-Badr Shatari, former professor at UAE National Defense College and Emirati economist. With us also Dr. Nasser bin Hassan Al-Shaikh. Speakers from Turkey include Professor Hassan Basri Yalcin, a lecturer at Istanbul Commerce University, Dr. Tariq Al-Sharqawi, chairman of TRT World Research Center, and Professor Faisal Kurt, lecturer at Istanbul Medeniyet University. I welcome the speakers from both sides and thank them for accepting our invitation to participate in this webinar. I would also like to extend my special thanks and appreciation to Dr. Oz Gunnar for his significant efforts in making this event possible. Before our discussion begins, I would like to bring to your attention that interpretation services are available in Arabic and English. Discussions on each theme will last for 30 minutes, during which one speaker from each side will participate. Each speaker will take 15 minutes sharp, and I will use my timer to stop him when he exceeds the limit time. I will start discussion with the implication of geostrategic shifts on the UAE-Turkish deterrent. I invite Dr. Abdul Khaliq Abdullah to take the floor and talk about this topic He will be followed by Professor Hassan Al-Basri Yaljan, and I will please ask all other speakers to mute their microphone until their turn comes. Please, Dr. Abdul Khaliq.
Thank you, Dr. Ibtisam, and good morning to you all here and there in Turkey. Happy to kick off this important dialogue this morning. And I like to, in the times that Dr. Ibtisam allows 15 minutes, I'd like to highlight at least 4 points with regard to the geopolitics of the region and this unfolding relationship between our 2 countries. The first quick point has to do with the fact that I believe that the most important development, the most interesting development, and the most promising development that happened during the year 2021 is this dialogue and this evolving relationship between our 2 countries. I think the 2 countries are taking the lead to de-escalate tension. I think they are taking the lead to turn all the disputes behind them and open up a new chapter in their bilateral relationship, and also working together very closely to tone down regional temperature. So I think that is very important, very promising, and probably the most important development of 2021 in retrospective, because when the 2 countries join together, I think, and take the lead and put their dispute behind them, I think we are in for a very promising Middle East. Something to celebrate, and I thought this is the way to start the discussion. The second point I like to highlight here is that this new dynamic we have seen in the last 1 year and in the past 6 months is full of good news and full of bad news. The glass is half full, the glass is half empty. But I think when I look at the region and how it has unfolded during the last 12 months, I think I see more good news than bad news. I see the glass more half full than glass half empty. And I see that the mood is more positive than negative. And I think, therefore, I am more optimistic than I am pessimistic as we go into the future. Not only that, but I dare to say that the next probably 5 years, the next 10 years even, going all the way to 2030, I think there is more opportunity than there is confrontation as we go ahead. So that is point number 2, which I like also to end up by saying the journey is not going to be easy, of course. We are still in the 5 minutes of our relationship, in the first 10 minutes of regional rapprochement. And so there is still a long way to go, and there is a lot of work that needs to be done for both the country and for other regional actors too. But I see that the next 10 years are probably going to be vastly different from the turbulent 10 years of the Arab Spring. Point number 3 has to do with some of the challenges that I like to highlight and some of the areas that we need to work on. And this, in the third point, there are 2 issues that need to be highlighted and deserves our discussion. The first one has to do with America, and the second one has to do with Iran. Both are very important challenges and very important issues to be considered in any discussion. Speaking of America first, America is always in the background, it's going to be always in the background, and sometimes even much more involved than we would think because of the history of it. But I think they are no longer going to be in the driver's seat all the time as they used to be during the last, whatever, 70 years plus. It's going to be over the horizon more than it's going to be in the driver's seat from now on. And I think I go along with this theory that we're going to be probably see less of America as we go along into the future. Less of America military footprint, less of America probably politically. And I think we should be in this mood for a post-Middle East America, a post-Arab Gulf America. And with that, there is plenty of good news and plenty of challenges and probably difficulties to come. The good news of it is that it allows the regional powers such as Turkey, UAE, etc., to take a bigger role in deciding their own destiny, in deciding their own future, and in solving the many problems of the region. That is probably a good news for us, okay? But then there is this bad news which has to do with Iran. Iran is, for us, at least from where I sit and from where we come from, Iran is a big challenge. Iran is a major threat. Iran will remain a constant threat to Gulf security, to regional stability. And I think if there is one regional power that would like to take advantage of less of America, it's not China, it's not Europe, it's not even Russia, it is Iran. At the end of the day, Iran is preparing itself for more activities throughout the region. And I think that is going to be a major challenge and an important issue to discuss here. Especially coming from where we are. Iran has always been a threat coming from the east. Now it is Iran is a threat coming from the south in Yemen and coming from north in Iraq. And we have seen that firsthand lately here in the United Arab Emirates. Iran is going nuclear, Iran is going missilizing the Gulf security. It is developing its vast drone capabilities. So a product of less America is going to be probably more Iran, not necessarily more China and more Russia or more Europe. And that is a worrying issue, and we need as partners to talk about it more. Finally, the final points, if I still have 5 more minutes to go, I think the final point has to do with the reality of this evolving Turkish-UAE relationship, okay? And I think we need to be a bit frank, and we need to be candid with each other as this relationship evolves. We are all aware how strong is the economic leg of the relationship. The economic leg of the relationship is promising, it's healthy, it is solid, and it is bound to get even more solid and stronger. However, I like to point out, as where I come from, I like to point out issue with the political leg of the relationship, the strategic leg of the relationship. We need to really, in dialogues like this, to a little bit look at these 2 areas of the relationship, the political leg, the military leg probably, the strategic leg, and where is this heading? And I think I see that the political leg still needs a lot of work in this relationship, and I don't like to see that this relationship to be purely economic, purely business, purely investment. If that is the way it is going to be, I think probably we see a relationship that is strong in one area and weak in so many areas. With that in mind, I see I have questions. I'll bring to this discussion many questions. What are we going to do to strengthen our political, military, strategic cooperation? Are we going to see more military cooperation in the years to come? Something that probably is very promising between these 2 countries. Are we going to be on the same pages when it comes to some difficult issues such as Syria, Libya, among just to mention a few of these issues? Are we going to see Are we going to be on the same pages when it comes to the role of the Islamists, something that was the area of a problem in our relationship for the past 10 years? Where are we going to stand when it comes to questions of terrorists and questions of Muslim Brotherhood, among just to name a few? Are we going to see a day when we will have more military cooperation between UAE and Turkey? And not only that, but are we going to see one day more Turkish military presence in the Gulf as a result of this emboldened Iran and the threat that we feel from Iran? What kind of Turkish plan for their military presence? We know how strong is the Turkish-Qatar relationship, and there is a military base there. Are we going to see another a Turkish military base in the United Arab Emirates? These are, to me, some of the questions that I like to bring to this discussion. I know that, at the moment, everybody is talking about economics and investment and business and signing so many MOUs on that level. But I think, and I hope that when President Erdogan come in here and meet the Crown Prince and UAE's leaders, that we need to sort out the more entangled and the more difficult issue and try to strengthen the political and the strategic leg of the relationship. Tissam, I still have 3 more minutes. I will give it up to my friends, Al-Badr Shatri or Dr. Hassan Sheikh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Khaliq. Now I will give the floor to Professor Hassan Basri Yalji. Please, Professor.
Right now, I think it's okay. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here for a discussion about the relations between Turkey and the United Arab Emirates. And I would like to thank to the organizers of this timely meeting because it is just before the visit of President Erdogan, and it is just after the visit from the United Arab Emirates. And as you told us, there are very good agreements and MUOs between Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, and they are promising, at least on the economic level right now. And I will certainly agree with Dr. Abdul Khaliq. There is some certain need for the development of cooperation between Turkey and the United Arab Emirates on the other fields of cooperation, like security measures and some political agreements. And I will also say that I'm quite optimistic about the questions that Dr. Abdul Khaliq asked, because in my speech, I will try to give some reasons for why I'm optimistic about for such a cooperative environment. I will generally argue that there are some certain developments we are experiencing right now in world politics that is actually maybe for a long time, for the first time in the Middle East, there is an opportunity of cooperation just based on regional dynamics, not just sourcing out of external dynamics, not just because of the conjunction of world politics, but because of regional dynamics. Regional actors of the Middle East are more prone to take their own measures in organizing their relations with their neighbors. I will give some reasons to this kind of an argument from both regional and global levels. Dr. Abdul Khaliq actually gave us an understanding about the US role in world politics and also in the Middle East. I will certainly agree with that argument. The United States is not on the driving seat anymore, but we should think about the time of that indifference of the United States towards the world politics. At the early stage of the 21st century and during the last half part of the 20th century, we used to think that the United States is everywhere as an hegemonic actor and it's on the driving seat. So most of the actors in all regions of the world just calculated their positions according to US behavior. Even partners of the United States and even the rivals of the United States just took a look to the US position, and most of the actors just arranged their positions according to the US position. But just after the war in Iraq and just after the civil war in Syria, just during the second period of Obama administration, just because of some domestic policy issues mainly, the United States started to follow some kind of a different strategy towards the world politics. I don't know how much this was calculated. I don't know how much this works in favor of the US. I don't know how much this works for the other parts of the world. These are all open to discussion. But there is something very clear about this US position. They do not want to take the burden of providing security in other parts of the world anymore. This is very clear. This became very clear actually in Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, and all other parts of the world. Right now, we are observing the events taking place in Ukraine. And the US position is not anymore different in Ukraine. Ukraine is considered as an important, strategically important part of European security and European cooperation. And NATO was a promising actor in that region. But as you will just see from the reactions of Germany and France and all other European actors, they have some distrust about the US position, whether the United States is going to put enough efforts to protect Ukraine or the European Union against any kind of Russian aggressive behavior. Under these conditions, for a long time, we have observed there are certain uncertainties in the world politics. It is not clear anymore. You cannot just watch the US behavior and you cannot just arrange your national interests according to that kind of US behavior. So all states, I remember in the 90s, there were too many books and articles published about the uncertainty of world politics. But looking from now, from here, looking to the 90s were quite certain time periods. Everything was clear. US was out there. European Union was progressing under the US security umbrella. There were certain conditions even in the Middle East. And everything was clear. Right now, we don't know what the US wants. We don't know what US behavior will be in some specific circumstances. We don't know even the United States is going to balance against Russian aggressiveness. We don't know even they talk too much about China. We don't know what the United States is going to do about China. We don't know what the US is going to do about Iranians' nuclear search. We don't know anything about all these issues. And I believe Americans are also not aware about what they are going to do in the next steps. This is called uncertainty in world politics. And when uncertainty is out there, then you can expect security dilemma is going to rise all around the world. And I believe we are experiencing in most of the world right now, in Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, in Ukraine, in Libya, and all other regions, we are experiencing some kind of we are experiencing the outcomes of the US indifference to world politics. So it is not easy to say that we are entering into a multipolar world order. I don't argue that one. People like to talk about this multipolarity, but I will say that this is not because of multipolarity. This is because of US voluntary behavior for withdrawal from world politics. So it is open to discussion whether one day the United States is going to be back around world politics. It is something other if we are talking about whether the United States is never going to come back. But during that time period, regional actors or globally, potentially global actors, it doesn't matter. They all have to take care of their own business in world politics right now. States are expected to ally with other states, and they are expected to cooperate with other states on the security issues if they want to survive under these uncertain conditions. This is one part of the reality which actually obligates states to take their own measures for their security. But the other part of the story is directly related to the Middle Eastern affairs. We were used to say that Middle East is one of the shatter belts in the world politics. It was too much affected by external powers, and that creates an unstable situation in the Middle East. But I would say that we are relatively in a better position in terms of stability compared to 10 years compared to the 10 years ago. If the early stages of American withdrawal were experienced in the Middle East, it was in Syria, it was in Libya, it was in Yemen, it was in other regions. But at the end of a long period of time, in all these civil war events or in all these transformation efforts, we observed that nothing changed and no one lost any kind of war in these situations. So there is some kind of a deadlock in all these situations, and I believe all parts of these unstable regions just understood that there is no way to go more. Maybe Syria problem is not settled, but it is frozen. Maybe Libya is not settled down, but it is frozen. Maybe nothing will be resolved in a short period of time in Yemen, but all sides understood that they are not gonna win against the other side. So that is maybe not a stable situation, but it is a situation in which conflicts are frozen. And I believe that this is the second reason why there is some kind of an opportunity for cooperation in the Middle East and Gulf region, and a possibility
3 minutes, Dr. Hassan, 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay, I will conclude in 3 minutes. That I believe there is a possibility because of this regional, relatively secure position. And I can also see that between United Arab Emirates and Turkey, if we are again talking genuinely, there might be certain disagreements on some certain issues. But cooperation requires even some different perspectives. If Turkey and United Arab Emirates understand very well the current situation in world politics and the possibility of cooperation in the region, I believe cooperation between these two countries will not just remain on the economic level, but it will certainly develop into other parts like political and military cooperation. I'm not going to exceed my time. Thank you for reminding it. Thank you very much. It was a great opportunity. If there will be a Q&A section, I will be more than happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. Thank you so much. I will move now to the second part of our webinar, which is how to build
I cannot hear you.
How to build a constructive dialogue on foreign policy issues, defense and security cooperation. And here we will have Dr. Badr Shatri, former professor at UAE National Defense College. And we will have also Dr. Tariq Al-Sharqawi, chairman of TRT World Research Center. I will start with Dr. Badr. Dr. Badr, you have 15 minutes. Floor is yours now, please. Dr. Badr?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Please, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes. Good morning, and thank you for the invite. I'm very happy and glad to be part of this. I think the relationship between Turkey and UAE is very important, and is going to what should be a normal relationship between two regional powers in the Middle East and two historical friends in our region. I just want to go a little bit back to history in order to understand the current dilemma we live in and where we are now. Actually, the UAE-Turkish relationship was at its best when the AKP, the Justice and Development Party, arrived in power in 2002. The new government stressed its Middle East credentials and presented itself as a bridge between the East and the West. Turkey has become a modern and developed and democratic Muslim country that managed otherwise fraught relationship between religion and politics. The relationship also reached its zenith. I still recall vividly when a high-level state visit by President Abdullah Gül arrived in Abu Dhabi, heading a very large delegation. So always was the relationship with Turkey was good, and also after the arrival of Erdogan and the AKP party was even better. However, the last decade saw a diplomatic relationship going south between the two countries, and I think there were four dynamics that have influenced the relationship. The first was that the negotiation over the EU accession by Turkey was dragging and then stalled almost completely up to now, and Turkey became more interested and reoriented into the Middle East, and its reorientation probably stepped in toes of some Arab actors within the Middle East. The second dynamic that is responsible for the deterioration of the relationship is the Arab Spring that provided an opportunity for Turkey or surplus power to deal with regional powers that were in defensive posture. So Turkey found this as an opportunity for it to assert its influence in the Middle East and saw political Islam as a winning horse that could be ridden into victory in the Middle East. The third dynamic, I think, was the coup manqué, or the failed coup in 2016 that militated Ankara against domestic and foreign adversaries. So those were and the fourth one, of course, at the same year, Trump election in 2016 provided a surplus power to the GCC and especially UAE and Saudi Arabia to deal with what they saw as a Turkish attempt at hegemony. But when the relationship entered into a zero-sum game, both sides saw the gain of one side as a loss for the other side. But in the long run, the relationship became not zero-sum, but a negative sum. That is to say, a loss for both sides. And Iran actually was watching those two countries fighting and actually seized the opportunity to assert more of its influence in the region. Now, both sides realized that they have common interests. If they just pursue it rationally, they will reach at some common understanding. So there are many issues and areas of cooperation that both UAE and Turkey, both countries are interested in stability as a must in post-COVID economic recovery. The COVID metaphor is nobody gets well unless everybody gets well. So this applies also to stability in the region. If there is no stability in one region, other people cannot enjoy that stability. So in this sense that both countries can work together in stabilizing areas of conflict. Yemen is one area, and Turkey can use its clout, diplomatic muscle to pressure Tehran in nudging the Houthis to accept a political solution. Another area of instability in our region is Sudan, which suffers from chronic instability as usual. Both countries can extend aid to support the political transition and can invest in infrastructure and job creating that will absorb youth population. Syria is slowly recovering from a decade-long civil war. Both UAE and Turkey can play a role in rehabilitating the Bashar regime and find a political solution for the warring faction. Iraq is also another neighboring country to Turkey. Stability in Iraq, especially in the north, is of strategic interest to Turkey. And a stable and strong Iraq, free from foreign influence, will have a positive impact on the region generally. Both countries can cooperate in supporting the political process within Iraq that as is evolving. Also, both countries have common interest in seeing the civil war ending in Libya to protect their own interests and that of their allies. The cooperation of UAE and Turkey probably will be far-reaching than any other two countries in the region, and I think they can both bring about a political solution to the Libyan crisis. Last but not least is the Arab-Israeli conflict or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Turkey enjoys a good relationship with both sides, and UAE-Israeli relationship is growing by the day, and perhaps both can play a role in bringing a peaceful settlement between the Palestinians and the Israelis that will cast a positive shadow on the region. Another important area of cooperation between Turkey and UAE could be checking against any hegemonic powers. I agree with many of the speakers, from the two previous speakers. Probably US influence in the region is waning for now, at least, although I think the Gulf plays an important strategic space or in the thinking of the United States, and that might be different than the whole Middle East. And also Israel is a very important country for the United States. So probably is waning, but also still US has influence. But both UAE and Turkey has an important interest or a common interest in checking any power from dominating, any single power from dominating the Middle East. A nuclear Iran will change the regional dynamics radically, and both UAE and Turkey will be uncomfortable in the shadow of nuclear capable Iran, whether they produce a weapon or they be a threshold state. Another nuclear state, of course, is Israel, diplomatic ties notwithstanding. Both will have to watch the ambitions of this country, and also both have to work for a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East that serves both interests. Another factor important in the cooperation between UAE is non-state actors. Non-state actors have become the plague of our time. You can have militias or states, but you cannot have both. Countries like Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen are chafing under a multitude of militias. And we saw how the militias can destabilize any region and prevent any development economically, socially, and politically. Turkey itself has suffered from terrorist attacks, and UAE is now at the receiving end of Houthis attacks by drones and missiles. So combating those non-state actors is very important. Strengthening states in our region is very important for both sides, because you cannot have both, and you can have only either a militia or the state. Last point that I want to emphasize in the growing cooperation between is the military industrialization. Turkey defense industry has grown by leaps and bounds. In only 1 decade, it has grown from 2 billion, I believe, to a $10 billion business. UAE has a fledgling military industry that is still growing, and there are many area of cooperation between the two countries in military industrialization, that they can achieve strategic autonomy in armament, and both can retain much values. Instead of buying armament from outside, they can both create more jobs within their country, retain more technology, and retain more capital within their country. The UAE lacks human resources, then it can outsource some of its industries to Turkey, and vice versa. Turkey can also invest in those industries, and I think to the mutual benefit of Turkey and the UAE. Last but not least, we hope to see more of this dialogue between us and our Turkish brothers and friends. And I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Badr. I'll move now the mic to Dr. Tariq Sharkawi. Dr. Tariq, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. And I would like to really congratulate the Emirates Policy Center for this initiative jointly done with the Department of Public Diplomacy at the Presidency. This is very necessary, and it's timely as well. I would like to pick up from the last point that Professor Al-Badr Al-Shatri has mentioned, which is how to basically maintain the dialogue and have more avenues for this dialogue. And I would like to put forward 4 elements which would lay the groundwork for a sustained and constructive cooperation in foreign policy and security matters. Of course, it goes without saying that the first cornerstone for such an endeavor is political will. So I'm glad, as you mentioned, Dr. Al-Ketbi before, there was an immense breakthrough last August when His Excellency Sheikh Tahnoun bin Zayed made the trip to Ankara, and this was a really necessary breakthrough to be made. And then it was followed by phone calls by the leaders of the two countries. And then there was this very important visit by His Royal Highness UAE's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed. Well, what is important about that visit is not just official meetings went very well, and there was a lot of cordial exchanges, but also the private meetings went extremely well in a family-like environment. And this is, I think, necessary not just because it's kind of dilutes a lot of tension, but it also creates a personal chemistry between the leaders. And if you take some parallels, there are a lot of issues between Russia and Turkey, for example, on so many fronts, many more than the ones between UAE and Turkey. But still, there is a personal chemistry between the two leaders in Moscow and Ankara, which allows sometimes very difficult decisions to be still considered, and there is always a way to find compromise. So this is my first point, is the political will and personal chemistry. Of course, Ankara and Abu Dhabi were often entangled in competing interests and objectives in the past decade. This is no secret; it's an open secret. The analysis, of course, of both the behavior of both government can be explained via different ways and different theories. But I found the theory of offensive realism by John Mearsheimer to be, in his book, The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, to be a very good paradigm to explain the relationship. Well, the Arab uprisings and all that followed have caused many flashpoints between Ankara and Abu Dhabi, whether in Syria, Libya, the Horn of Africa, elsewhere. I wouldn't dwell on that too much, but this turbulent chapter had all the conditions prophesied by the offensive realism theory. And one of them is the presence of anarchy, the possession of offensive military capabilities. The third point, which is the mistrust in each other's intention. And last but not least, survival as the primary state goal. Of course, all these elements were at play during the Arab Spring time. And we totally understand from the Turkish side, some concerns that were, for example, in Abu Dhabi about especially the conditions and what happened in the ousting of several leaders from power, such as in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, etc. But of course, as was highlighted by previous speakers, the American disengagement, or at least taking the backseat in driving the region, was also something that flamed the situation even more and created even more anarchy, because the absence of the protection, the US umbrella protection, or at least the decrease of this protection has made the sense of vulnerability very acute. So in any case, the region is moving away from the Arab Spring chapter. Unfortunately, a lot of the misconception, misperception, mistrust in each other intentions were often framed in ideological terms, even though I personally think that states have first and foremost national interests, and they are not driven by ideologies. So, however, the fact that this ideological spin has taken so long, in a long period of 10 years, we have to overcome this negative strategic communications, the narratives of enmity, which often leave traces of apprehension among the elites, the intellectual sphere, and the general public. Therefore, I would advocate, from my personal point of view, that a second cornerstone for the success and the perpetuation of any foreign policy and security dialogue is to create dialogue tracks and structures. And this is the way to make, for example, today is a very interesting exchange, and I'm delighted to listen to all what our colleagues here have been saying. A lot of elements are known, but a lot of them also are very important for us to grasp. So this kind of tracks and structures, they perpetuate the exchange of views and deepen the understanding of each other's security, architecture, strategic goals, ambitions, etc. And here again, I bring the example of what's happening between Ankara and Moscow, in which there is a lot of diplomatic mechanisms, and there is even a military dialogue ongoing all the time. And for example, the situation in Syria is very tense, and it has created a lot of tensions between both sides, but there is always a political and military dialogue. And this is why I advocate that such an example could be emulated, and joint platforms could be created for similar strategic dialogue between Ankara and Abu Dhabi. One of the tracks could be purely political, and it could include IR specialists, diplomats, think tankers, opinion leaders from both sides. And this could be like, where the platform where, for example, ideas are tested, initiatives explained. A lot of, I found the UAE foreign policy fascinating. It has a lot of ambitions, but we need a lot more explanation. Sometimes things are not as clear as they are intended. And of course, these platforms would have the mutual respect for each other's independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national identity. A separate track could be about security and military issues. So in this track, it's about building more confidence, building measures and security building measures. But you need specialists for that. And I think one of the ways is to have and this is just an idea, have 2+2 ministerial dialogues in which, for example, you have only the people in charge of the defense portfolio and the intelligence portfolio meet together in a formal, for example, a yearly meeting. But 1 year to meet after 1 year is not enough. So you'll have to have like periodic preparatory intersessional meetings, which would have experts from both sides. I believe that this would lay the groundwork for example, a foundational agreement, like have an agreement between the two sides on military and security issues, and therefore the relations between both sides will become more predictable and coherent. Of course, there can be also some long-term tools. And I congratulate Professor Abdel Khaliq for bringing like the long-term perspective. We don't want just to have things for now, etc. And we want like a cooperation in many other aspects. There can be also long-term tools for dialogue and understanding each other. So for example, in the Cold War era, and I'm not bringing this example to draw any parallels. Of course, what is taking place between the relationship between Turkey and UAE is far better than ever what have been between the Soviets and the US. However, there was a time in the Cold War period where the US strategists were stunned. They were really astonished to find that the other part, the Soviets, had like such gross misunderstandings of their intentions, their systems, their strategies, their capabilities. And they conveyed this point to the Soviet side. The Soviet side listened to this critique, and they enhanced the capability of an institute of, they call it there at that time, Institute of World Economy and International Relations. And this is a parallel, of course, while what joins and connects the UAE and Turkey is much more, and there are so many things in common than whatever has existed between the US and the Soviet Union. But for example, it's establishing chairs at universities, whether in Turkey or in the UAE, understanding each other's politics, international relations, the vision of the world. This would produce specialists about the two countries that could, of course, further enhance the relations in the intellectual sphere, the media sphere, the public sphere. So this is my second element. My third element would be to have also to recognize or put in place some dimensions. I mean, what are we talking about now in terms of Turkey-UAE relations? So for example, it's very hard right now to manage contrasting visions, even though we have so many things in common and there are so much potential for more. But sometimes it's like in the essence of international relations makes that sometimes both countries will deal with competition, will have competing views or contrasting views for power, position, influence. So therefore, I propose to have two dimensions, at least for now, to work with. One of them is temporality, and the other one is compartmentalization. So a focus on temporality would focus on the pragmatic nature, a collaborative nature of now. Let's not dwell on what's happened in the past. Yes, the turbulent chapter of the Arab Spring is a painful chapter for everybody, but let's focus on the now. What can we do now? And this temporality will be something that enhances and make the relationship even easier to have and even better in the near future, rather than trying to have like an understanding on all subjects or all chapters, or like what we call in IRR a concert type arrangement, because the concert type arrangement will take a long term. And also it takes a greater degree of institutionalization, which is still lacking at this stage. Of course, compartmentalization is also a necessary dimension, because as you know, compartmentalization is a concept that stems from psychoanalysis. So it describes mechanisms that allow the handling of contradicting cognitions, principles, etc. So the aim is, when we take the relation between Ankara and Abu Dhabi, we have to have realistic expectations. We acknowledge also the limits of how can we influence each other's behavior. So if we compartmentalize issues, then we can navigate the relationship. We can understand that there are some, issues that we have only to agree to disagree. And there are many more avenues for collaboration and cooperation based on shared interests. And of course, I totally get what Professor Abdelkhaliq said before about, let's not just focus on one aspect, which is the economics, because we want a lot more. Of course, I mean, let's compartmentalize some subjects, but include every other file that is necessary in the discussion, from political, economic, cultural, military, defense, and anything can be on the table. But we have also to make sure that we know each other, and we have some dossier that we will not be able to reconcile.
Thank you so much. You
reached the limit. Okay, thank you.
Yes,
the fourth element was the economic factor, which my colleagues will deal with in the next event.
Thank you. You raise very important points, which I will add to it, that we need. You mentioned it, but we will frame it under people to people. This should be work on it. Instead of government to government, we need to enhance the other also, track people to people, media, civil society, all these things which work as a cushion if anything happen on the level of government. I will move now to the business and economic part. We're talking about there's cooperation opportunities, and here I will ask Dr. Nasser bin Hassan Al-Shaikh to take the floor, and then we will move to Professor Faisal Turk. Dr. Nasser, 15 minutes is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Ibtissam, for the invitation to be among a distinguished group like the one we have present here today. I think it comes, I have to repeat what have been said. It comes at a very important time. I think the relationship between the UAE and Turkey can have positive implications on others, not just on UAE and Turkey. Of course, I'm not a politician, and I do not claim to be that. But looking at the economic side, a person has always has to try to read the political scene to see what implications it has on the economic side. It's been said that that we should not only focus on the economic aspects, but look at other things too. But if I look at the history of the UAE, we have always recognized that we have a horse and the carriage, and the horse is the economy, and the carriage, of course, is our overall relationships. So for about 40 years, we always served our economic interests and the growth of the country and so on. But in the past maybe decade, since the start of the Arab Spring, there was that realization that some other factors have priority, and we were willing to make certain sacrifices. And I repeat something that has been said by the last speaker, and I completely agree with it, which is, we should not dwell on the past. We should take whatever learnings that we can take from it and just move forward. And this is the only way. This is the only way to do it. Now, looking at the economic side, we have to. I might take a couple of minutes just to look at the background. Talking about the future, we have to understand the background. Where do we stand today? So if I look at the, since the incorporation or the establishment of the United Arab Emirates in 1971, we had good relationships, with Turkey. But in 1984, I think that was an important year, because this is where we had an economic pact or an agreement signed between the UAE and Turkey. And that covered a number of things that are important for any investment going from any side, which is, investment protection, avoidance of double taxation, sharing some data between the stock markets and so on. And that, I think, and I still remember back in the 80s, we were vacationing in Turkey when the late Sheikh Zayed visited Turkey and was there in Ankara, and that was a momentous moment for us, and the relationships just, and I'm talking about the economic side, the relationships just kept building on and growing until the current ruling party, I think, came to power, and that was. I think, President Erdogan provided us with a very good example since his days being the mayor of Istanbul on, how to have a progressive economic policy. And, it was an impressive experience to look at. And again, I still remember, how warm the relationships were. And I still remember when, the late Sheikh Maktoum, the vice president at the time, the ruler of Dubai, passed away. President Erdogan was one of the first ones to jump on a plane, come down to Dubai, and offer his condolences. And that was that just gives you the warmth of the relationship at the time. We go fast forward. We still in 2021, despite all the political sensitivities that we have lived, in the past decade, we still maintained a good trade relationship with Turkey, and Turkey still maintained a good trading relationship with the UAE, and that's evident because Turkey, by the end of last year, Turkey was the 11th largest trading partner for the UAE, and the UAE was the 12th largest trading partner for Turkey. So that, all this background just, explains that we do have, huge past successes, mutual, between us. So we're not talking about starting like a new relationship. And I think one of the strengths is that we, as both countries, we managed to navigate, separating the economic relationship from any political conflict, in the past decade, and that's an important thing. Looking at the warming up of the relationship right now, starting, of course, I don't need to repeat what has been said, but starting with the visit of Sheikh Tahnoun, and then the visit of Sheikh Mohammed, and the expected visit of President Erdogan to the UAE. Okay, these were the highlights, but there were a lot of other visits too that did not get their right exposure. So we had many ministers coming down here. We had the renewal of the Turkish Trade Council here, and for us, again, politics aside, for us, if we say that China is the manufacturing plant of the world, I think regionally we realize that Turkey is the manufacturing plant of the region here. It has the most advanced industrial sector, in many areas. So I think, you know, the prospects of future cooperation are there, you know, even in the midst of these turbulent times. We still had, you know, one of the UAE banks making a very big investment in Turkey. You know, we do realize that, you know, from an economic perspective, that, you know, there are risks associated with it, and I'm not talking about political, but I'm talking about currency and so on. And I will not go into the reasons, you know, that led to that, but that's, you know, Turkish fiscal policy that we respect. But we think it will correct, you know, with the right measures, and we're starting to see some. And I think there was again that important agreement between the UAE and Turkey, where we had, you know, $5 billion of currency swap between the two central banks, just to support the Turkish central bank in dealing with the currency situation. So I mean, you know, people talk about, you know, the let's say the current weaknesses of Turkish economy. We don't see it as weaknesses. You know, there is a weakness with the currency, no doubt. But the economy, the Turkish economy, is built on you know, solid sectors, solid manufacturing, and so on. I mean, so all the elements are there. We're not worried about that. Other than that, I mean, there are, you know, it's so easy to get into, you know, the disputes of the past, but looking at it from another angle, I think it, you know, if two countries should have a good working relationship, I think it's Turkey and the UAE, because we have too many similarities between us. You know, here in the UAE, we perfected over the years the hubbing concept, you know, to be a hub for the region. And this is what Turkey is for its region too. It's, you know, it's a very important hub. So when I look at the sectors that we perfected, for example, airlines, you know, our only two competitors you know, for Emirates Airlines, for example, would be, you know, Turkish Airlines and the Qatari Airlines in the region. So this is an industry we all know very well. Of course, I mean, Turkey has a long, let's say, heritage when it comes to the tourism industry. But again, here in the UAE, I think we pioneered how a tourism industry can be built here, you know, in the GCC countries, and we're happy to see others trying to emulate it in their areas. So I mean, there are many similarities between us, and I think you know, it only makes sense for us going forward to build on what was achieved in the past. And you know, maybe the successes that we can strike in the economic side can be a catalyst for you know, for fixing the, you know, political side too. So, and I will just, you know, stop here, and we'll be happy to address anything else.
Thank you, Nasser, and I will give the floor now to Dr. Faisal. Dr. Faisal?
Yeah.
Please. Floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. And before all, I would like to thank the organizer of this panel, to Emirates Policy Center and Communication Director of Turkish Republic. And I am really glad to be part of it. I will actually, the presenters and my colleagues that talked before me explain too many points, explain the opportunities for cooperation between the two countries, so that maybe my speech will just remind a few points. And I will give some numbers about the economy, but I am not economist. Just I am taking the rapprochement in the economic area as a departure point to political and to other sectors. First of all, let me put my point that I consider the international political process as an opportunity for both sides. As my colleagues talk before me, and as we all of us know, the Middle East has been really in turmoil for several years, not only because of the internal reasons, but also because of the international interventions. But nowadays, the world politics focuses on the USA, China's rivalry in Asia, and Russia, Europe power struggle in Ukraine. And moreover, United States and Russia as a dominant powers on the Middle East, shifting their focuses to the other regions, as we witnessed in these days. And secondly, maybe some analysts argue that Biden administration has encouraged regional powers of the Middle East to reach out to each other. And these reconciliations and the rapprochement that we witnessed in the region were outcome of Biden's effect. But contrarily, I think, and more importantly, regional powers' collective realization that United States is no longer interested in the Middle East as much as before. Mr. Abdul Khalik Abdullah, Hassan Basri Alcin, and other colleagues emphasize this point, but it is really important to understand the rapprochement in the region. And the Afghanistan withdrawal was one of such reasons regional powers to question their relations with the United States. In light of this, United States withdrawal or its less presence in the Middle East provide a space for regional powers to take an initiative and maybe to reconstruct their relationship with each other. The Gulf reconciliation within itself, the negotiations between Turkey and Egypt, the negotiations between Turkey and Israel, and maybe the negotiations between United Arab Emirates and Iran are consequences of this initiative. That's why some analysts even describe the United Arab Emirates and Turkey's rapprochement as a step towards a post-American era in our region. From my point of view, the competition and rivalry among the regional powers on last decade reached its limits. And now this space of rivalry turned to a negotiation. The actors move faster, and from that point, I think the actors move faster can benefit much more than others. And I think Turkey and United Arab Emirates consider this international and regional atmosphere in order to construct a new chapter that's based on win-win formulations. Both countries have begun a period of normalization in the past 2 years. Actually, it is not very new, as both increased their competition on the region in the recent decade. As we know, Turkey welcomed Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan on last November, marking the highest level visit to Ankara since nearly a decade-long disagreement between the two countries. And this visit started, I think, a new page in Turkey, United Arab Emirates in economic relations, with signature of several investment accords that will be supported with nearly a 10 billion fund. The agreements concentrated on strategic sectors such as energy, ports and logistics, petrochemicals, technology, food and healthcare, as well as some cooperation deals between stock exchange and central banks with a potential swap agreement. And let me say that even though this move came when Turkey was in most need of foreign investment, the investment actually was also United Arab Emirates' priority. As an oil-rich Emirate financing the country, Abu Dhabi has been a long player of international investments, not in Turkey, but in other regions of the world. Foreign investments for the United Arab Emirates are essential for several reasons. Firstly, the Emirates has long been aiming to diversify its oil-based economy, meaning it is always looking for investment globally. And Turkey has been on the Gulf investment agenda since the last 2 decades. But the recent crisis that my colleagues talk about before me, between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, unfortunately, was an obstacle to move forward. So that the visit of Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and the coming visit of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, I think, will be a turning point for economic relations between 2 countries. Moreover, overlapping of targets for future is another component for cooperation. Just to give an example, in energy sector, Turkey target of carbon neutrality by 2053 and published the Turkish Green Deal Action Plan in July 2021 to support economic transition. And similarly, the United Arab Emirates has energy strategy 2050 action plan to increase clean energy from 25% to 50% until 2050. So that I think these 2 important countries in the Middle East can extend their cooperation from economic arena to political arena and make a significant contribution to Gulf security and regional prosperity. Of course, we did not solve all the problems. We still have maybe some disagreements on the regional issues such as Libya and Syria. But this rapprochement and political will that Tarık Şerkavi talked about could be considered as a first step to take initiative to set up a political agenda as well. And I am really optimistic about the Mr. Abdul Khalik Abdullah questions about the future and not to limit our cooperation in the economic area, but to extend them to the strategic level and to the political level. And as I said, maybe the current disagreement between the 2 countries, still we have some disagreements, but we can take this economic rapprochement as a departure point to extend our cooperation to other areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Faisal, and I extend my thanks to all speakers for their valuable insights and excellent intervention. And before we close this webinar, I would also say that as a student of international relations, the relations between the countries never been identical. The interests never been identical. There are an area of differences always will be there. Not suppose it's not a love relation, it's interest relation. So where to come together and bridge that gap where is differences, this is depends on both parties. I would put a frame for this relation between this country and if we are talking about cooperation, there are 2 elements. There are threats, which we consider it now we're facing the whole world, new threats based on new pandemics, climate change, cyber attacks. There are many we can cooperate to face that challenges also. And there are also opportunities, how we cooperate to maximize these opportunities between each other. There will be always some differences. This is to be sure, and this should not be preclude that relation or that cooperation. We can work tactically and think strategically on where, yes, the whole world changed. The whole world changed after the pandemic. And there are also another challenge. We have to live with it, and we have to know how to navigate between that competition between the superpowers in the world. This is also needs the two parties to sit and to find out how they will cooperate through this competition between superpowers. I would thank you very much, and thanks extended also mine, and thanks for the public diplomacy in the presidential, Turkish presidential office for their cooperation, for their help to make this successful webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you.